Some nights in baseball break your heart slowly. Pitch by pitch. Error by error. The rhythm you spent weeks rebuilding, the timing, the confidence, the delicate internal clockwork that separates a dominant pitcher from a struggling one, unraveling in real time while 50,000 people watch and an entire nation holds its breath. That was Yoshinobu Yamamoto's night. And the cruelest part? It wasn't his fault. Not entirely. Not in the way that matters most to a pitcher who has dedicated every waking hour of his professional life to the pursuit of perfection on the mound. The runs that came. The quality start that slipped away. The sharp, public rebuke from a legend whose opinion carries weight in every corner of the baseball world. None of it originated from Yamamoto's arm, or his preparation, or the extraordinary competitive spirit that brought him from Japan to the biggest stage in Major League Baseball. It originated from an error. A single defensive mistake by Kim Hye-sung that disrupted everything Yamamoto had carefully constructed over the course of that game. One misplay that cascaded into runs, into damage, into a night that will sit uncomfortably in the memory of everyone who watched it unfold. But here is the thing about the Dodgers. Here is the thing about a lineup that contains Shohei Ohtani. The night doesn't end when the pitcher struggles. The night doesn't end when errors change the scoreboard. The night doesn't end until the last out is recorded, and on this particular evening, that last out never came for the opposition. Because Ohtani had 3 hits. Because the Dodgers found a way. Because Los Angeles walked off the field with a victory that felt, depending on where you were sitting, like either a miracle or an inevitability. This is the full story of that night. Every painful moment of it. And every redemptive one. To understand what was at stake for Yoshinobu Yamamoto on this night, you have to understand the particular pressure that comes with being the most expensive pitching investment in the history of Major League Baseball. When the Dodgers signed Yamamoto, they were not simply acquiring a pitcher. They were making a statement about the future of their franchise, about their belief in a specific kind of pitcher, one who combines elite stuff with the kind of mental discipline and preparation philosophy that translates across cultures, across leagues, and across the vast competitive gulf between Nippon professional baseball and the major leagues. That statement came with expectations. And expectations, when they are large enough, have a way of becoming their own kind of weight. Yamamoto had not yet recorded a quality start this season. 6 innings pitched, 3 earned runs allowed or fewer, a threshold that defines consistent, reliable pitching performance and separates frontline starters from the rest of the rotation. For any pitcher, the absence of a quality start through the early portion of a season is a data point. For Yamamoto, given the contract, given the expectations, given the microscope under which every one of his outings is examined, it had become a narrative. And narratives in baseball have momentum of their own. He arrived at this start having worked meticulously through his between-start preparation. People inside the Dodgers organization describe a pitcher who treats every day between appearances as an opportunity to solve whatever problem the previous outing presented. Yamamoto does not simply throw bullpen sessions to maintain arm strength. He uses them to test hypotheses, adjusting grips, experimenting with release points, imagining specific counts and game situations and executing the pitch that his preparation tells him is correct for each scenario. He was ready. By every measure of what a pitcher can control before a game begins, Yoshinobu Yamamoto was ready for this start. What he could not control was what happened behind him. Errors in baseball are brutal in their simplicity. There is no ambiguity in the scorebook. No partial credit for effort, no acknowledgement of the degree of difficulty, no footnote explaining the specific circumstances that turned a routine play into a misplay. The error goes into the record, clean and unforgiving, and the runs that score as a result, runs that would not have scored without the mistake, are charged not to the pitcher but to the fielder who could not complete the play. That distinction matters enormously to a pitcher's statistics. But it matters very little to a pitcher's rhythm. Rhythm, for a starting pitcher, is everything. It is the internal tempo that governs how quickly he processes information between pitches, how confidently he trusts his stuff in pressure situations, how clearly he can execute a specific pitch to a specific location when the game is demanding his absolute best. Rhythm is built over innings, not over pitches. It accumulates gradually, like a structure being assembled one careful piece at a time. And it can be destroyed in an instant. Kim Hye-sung's error arrived at precisely the wrong moment. Yamamoto had been working efficiently. His pitch count was manageable. His command was holding. The quality start, that elusive first quality start of the season, was within reach. The structure was standing. Then the error. Then the runs that followed. Then the scoreboard changing in a way that forced Yamamoto to shift from pitching with confidence to pitching with urgency, a fundamentally different mental state that changes everything about how a pitcher attacks hitters. Urgency creates tension. Tension shortens the breath, tightens the mechanics, introduces fractions of a second of hesitation into movements that must be fluid and automatic to be effective. Yamamoto is skilled enough to manage that tension better than most pitchers alive. But he is not immune to it. No pitcher is. The innings that followed the error showed a different Yamamoto than the one who had taken the mound at the start of the game. Not dramatically different, he is too accomplished, too mentally disciplined for the change to be visible in obvious ways. But in the subtle indicators that experienced baseball observers track, the pace between pitches, the willingness to challenge hitters on the first pitch of an at-bat, the confidence with which he threw his secondary pitches in hitters' counts, the disruption was evident. The quality start slipped away. And the legend was watching. In any sport, there exists a category of criticism that is different from ordinary analysis. It is criticism delivered not by commentators seeking controversy or journalists filling column inches, but by people who have actually done what the athlete is attempting to do, who have stood in the same position, faced the same pressures, and earned the right to speak about performance with the authority of lived experience. When that kind of criticism arrives publicly, it lands differently. It cannot be dismissed as ignorance or agenda. It must be reckoned with. The legend's rebuke of Yamamoto following this performance was not cruel. It was not designed to damage. Anyone who understands the context of who delivered it and why recognizes it immediately for what it was, the kind of honest, direct assessment that elite athletes offer each other precisely because they respect the standard too much to pretend it was met when it wasn't. The core of the rebuke centered on what the legend identified as a failure to maintain composure after the error disrupted the game. Not a failure of physical ability, Yamamoto's physical tools were never in question. A failure of the mental architecture that the greatest pitchers in baseball history have demonstrated the capacity to construct, the ability to completely compartmentalize a bad inning, reset emotionally and mechanically, and return to the mound as if the damage had never occurred. The greatest pitchers, the legend argued, do not allow external events to rewrite their internal narrative mid-game. They acknowledge the error, they accept the runs on the scoreboard, and they proceed with the exact same approach and confidence they had before the play happened. They give the defense behind them no indication that their trust has been shaken. Yamamoto, on this night, showed the seams of his humanity. And the legend, who has watched enough baseball to know the difference between a pitcher having a bad night and a pitcher revealing a developmental gap that needs to be addressed, chose to address it publicly. The rebuke made headlines because it was honest. Because it was specific. And because everyone watching Yamamoto this season knows that the legend identified something real. While Yamamoto's struggle was unfolding on the mound, Shohei Ohtani was doing what Shohei Ohtani does. Not loudly. Not with the performative urgency of a player trying to will his team to victory through sheer force of personality. Quietly. Methodically. Hit by hit, at-bat by at-bat, with the steady accumulation of offensive production that has made him the most consistently dangerous hitter in the sport. 3 hits on this night. Each one arrived in a different situation, against different pitch types, requiring different adjustments and different decisions at the plate. Each one represented a separate, complete act of preparation meeting execution in real time, the kind of performance that looks effortless to the casual observer and reveals itself as extraordinarily difficult to anyone who has spent time understanding what it takes to produce it. The first hit came early. A line drive that split the outfield defenders and found the gap with the precision of a ball placed rather than struck. Ohtani had read the defensive positioning before the pitch was delivered, identified the location in the field where contact would be most productive, and directed the ball there with the kind of deliberate intention that separates great hitters from merely powerful ones. The second hit was different in character. A situation where the pitcher had adjusted his approach after the first hit, trying to exploit what he believed was a pattern in Ohtani's swing. What he discovered is what pitchers consistently discover when they attempt to pattern exploit Ohtani, that he has already anticipated the adjustment and prepared a counter. The second hit went the other direction. A reminder that there is no single defensive or strategic answer to Shohei Ohtani at the plate. The third hit was the one that Dodger Stadium will remember. Walk-off victories in baseball carry a weight that final-inning wins in other sports do not fully replicate. There is something about the structure of baseball, the fact that the home team always gets the last at-bat, that the game cannot end on a defensive play when the home team is trailing, that hope is structurally embedded in the sport's rules, that makes a walk-off hit feel like more than a single moment of athletic execution. It feels like the game itself conspiring to produce the most dramatic possible conclusion. When Ohtani's third hit of the night ended the game, the reaction at Dodger Stadium was not simply the celebration of a win. It was the release of everything the crowd had been holding, the anxiety of watching Yamamoto struggle, the frustration of the error, the tension of a game that had felt for long stretches like it was slipping away. All of it came out at once. In a sound that Dodger Stadium produces only when something truly significant has just occurred. Ohtani rounded the bases, or didn't need to, depending on the specifics of how the walk-off was recorded, and was met by teammates who understood exactly what had just happened. Not just the victory. The statement. That this Dodgers team, even on nights when the starting pitcher struggles and errors change the scoreboard and a legend is publicly critical and everything that was supposed to go right goes wrong, this team finds a way. Because Ohtani is in the lineup. Because he takes 3 at-bats worth of preparation into every single plate appearance. Because when the game is on the line and the crowd is standing and the pitcher on the other side is reaching for his best stuff, Shohei Ohtani is more likely than any other hitter alive to do exactly what the moment requires. Step back from the individual performances, Yamamoto's struggle, the error, the rebuke, the walk-off, and look at what this night reveals about the broader reality of the Dodgers' 2025 season. Every team that wins a championship does so through games exactly like this one. Games where the expected contributor struggles. Games where defensive mistakes create problems that shouldn't exist. Games where the legend watching from outside the organization publicly questions whether the standard is being met. Championship teams win those games anyway. Not because they are immune to adversity, but because somewhere in the lineup, someone has the capacity to absorb all of the night's accumulated difficulty and convert it into a single decisive moment. For the Dodgers, that someone is Shohei Ohtani. The legend's rebuke of Yamamoto is not a sign of a team in crisis. It is a sign of a standard being maintained, the insistence that even when external factors create difficult circumstances, the internal response must meet the highest possible bar. That kind of accountability, delivered honestly and publicly by someone with the credibility to deliver it, is what separates organizations that consistently compete from those that find comfortable explanations for falling short. Yamamoto will take the rebuke seriously. Anyone who has watched how he approaches his craft understands that he processes criticism not as an attack but as information, data to be absorbed, analyzed, and converted into adjustments before his next start. The pitcher who takes the mound next time will have thought deeply about what the legend identified and will have worked to close whatever gap the performance revealed. That is the Yamamoto process. That is what the Dodgers invested in. And that investment, even on nights like this one, is clearly still sound. Baseball does not offer clean narratives. It offers complicated ones, nights where the pitcher you are counting on struggles and the error you cannot afford happens and the legend you respect most says the thing you didn't want to hear. And then, somehow, your best player gets 3 hits and the last one ends the game and 50,000 people release everything they've been holding all night in one enormous, collective exhale. Yoshinobu Yamamoto will not remember this night as the night he failed to get his first quality start. He will remember it as the night he learned something specific about himself under pressure, something the legend identified with precision, something he can actually work on, something that the next version of him will have addressed. Kim Hye-sung will not carry the error indefinitely. Errors happen. What matters is how a player responds to them, in the next play, the next game, the next opportunity to make the routine play cleanly and contribute to a win. And Shohei Ohtani will remember this night the way he remembers all of his nights, as a data point in a long season of preparation and execution, another set of at-bats to analyze, another opponent's approach to study, another opportunity to refine the machine he has spent his entire life building. 3 hits. 1 walk-off. One very complicated, very human, very baseball night in Los Angeles. The Dodgers won. The legend spoke. Yamamoto listened. And somewhere in the preparation rooms and film sessions that follow every game, the work of becoming better, the quiet, relentless, unglamorous work that underlies every spectacular moment, has already begun again.